Let the games begin!
And we're going to tell you who's going to win them.
What up, everybody? It's the Rottweiler Patriots. I'm Vegas.
And I'm T-Bone.
And welcome, everybody, to our first predictions video of the season. Every single week, me and T-Bone predict who we think is going to win each and every NFL game, and we compete throughout the entire season. Last year, I won by 2 games. It was very, very close all year. I don't think any of us got to more than a 4-game lead as the season went on. T-Bone actually blew like 3 of them, I think.
Okay.
But regardless, it's a lot of fun. If you want to hear our insights on who we think's going to win every week, and you want to see which of us is better at predicting based on history, it's me. Then tune in every week. It will usually be Thursdays around 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Also, sorry if I do sound a little different today. I've been kind of sick lately. If you've watched our last couple of videos, you'd know that. Still, we're doing a little better today, but still feeling it. Anyways, with that being said, let's jump into the video.
Just a quick disclaimer, watch out for our fantasy videos, and if you have any qualms with how anyone's doing, it's all Vegas' fault because he's a fleecer.
You do it too. You absolutely do it too, so you don't get to complain about me. Anyways, our first matchup is Baltimore at Kansas City. Thursday Night Football, the opening match of the NFL season. And a rematch of the AFC title game. Kansas City, reigning Super Bowl champions, Baltimore fell to Kansas City in potentially controversial fashion. But these are two of the best teams in the entire NFL looking poised for a strong start to the year. T-Bone, your thoughts?
Well, not only is, I would say, Baltimore a better regular season player, as in they just don't do better in the playoffs. They're much more of a regular season darling. I just think that they're overall a better squad, even, with the studs on the Chiefs. And I think they're going to have anger and a chip on their shoulder that the Chiefs don't have. I'm taking the Ravens.
I think this is going to be a really tight matchup, just like last year's. I think it's going to be a little different than last year's. Baltimore will rely on the run more, but I think Baltimore's offense is just going to be so difficult for Kansas City to stop because Kansas City has Mahomes and Kelsey, but Baltimore's offense is more multi-dimensional, and I think Baltimore's going to be hungry for revenge, so give me the Ravens. Alrighty, our next matchup is Green Bay taking on Philadelphia. This is Friday night in Brazil. An interesting location for a Friday night opening week matchup, especially for two teams that wear green in a stadium where you really can't wear green as the home team. So Philadelphia is actually going to have to break the NFL uniform rules just to comply with the stadium rules. I'm sure the NFL has allowed the exception given the circumstances because no one wants to anger Brazilian cartels because those of you who aren't very familiar with Brazilian soccer and really South American soccer in general, a lot of it's cartel run. A lot of match fixing, a lot of money laundering, a lot of big cartel involvement. So, to not anger the cartels, they're going to allow some exceptions to the rules. But regardless, you're looking at two of the best teams in the NFL, Philadelphia and Green Bay, both exit football teams, both made the playoffs last year, both with very bright futures. Green Bay has Jordan Love slinging the rock, Philadelphia Jalen Hurts. Both have solid defenses. I'd argue Philadelphia probably has better offensive weapons, but Jordan Love is tough to contend with. T-Bone, your thoughts?
I would say that the Eagles may win this. It's going to be really close. I think the Green Bay is more up and coming, and I think the Eagles have more to lose. I also don't understand why they would have two green teams in a stadium that bans green. That's fine. Whatever. despite the cast that Philadelphia has acquired and will continue to probably use, I personally think that Green Bay is going to come in as the new big dogs, and they're gonna win. They're gonna beat Philadelphia. I think it's gonna be close, but I've got Green Bay.
Yeah, I think this is going to be one of the best games of the week for sure. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think the environment is going to be crazy and ridiculous, and that's going to make for, I think, a fun football experience. It's going to be interesting to see how Brazilians react. But I'm going to agree. I think Green Bay will have the edge in this one, but I think it will be close. Alrighty, our next matchup is the Carolina Panthers taking on the New Orleans Saints. The Panthers, coming off of being the worst team in the NFL last year, a 2-15 record. They look to make their team better. Improvements at offensive line, improvements at wide receiver, improvements on the defensive side of the ball. Carolina is looking like a better football team than they were last year. New Orleans seems to be in a hot mess. They're in cap hell. Derek Carr is very iffy right now, and I don't know how much that's his fault or the team's fault. There's health issues. I mean, New Orleans is in kind of an awkward place right now where no one really knows what they are, but I personally don't have a lot of trust in them. T-Bone, your thoughts?
I don't have a lot of trust in the Saints. They've been very wishy-washy, even with how bad we were last season. We still held our own for a while. I just think with the new personnel and everything that the Panthers have, and a week one win to boost the morale, I'm praying and hoping, but I'm just gonna trust the Panthers a little bit more here. The Saints are just, I don't think they're ready.
Yeah, I mean, I think Carolina has gotten more better than most people think they have. I obviously think there are still issues with Carolina, especially on the offensive side of the ball, but I do think that the offensive line upgrades are going to do wonders for the Carolina offense, and I just think New Orleans is such a mess right now that they're not going to be able to handle this new and improved Panthers team, so give me Carolina. Alrighty, the next matchup is the Minnesota Vikings taking on the New York Football Giants. The Vikings. Well, not a lot of optimism in Minnesota after starting quarterback and rookie J.J. McCarthy went down with injury in the preseason and is out for the year. Sam Darnold, currently the starting quarterback, no indication yet on if they're going to trade for another quarterback who they'd prefer to start over Darnold. With Sam Darnold starting, it's not going to be great for Minnesota, but they do still have Justin Jefferson, and they picked up Aaron Jones, so an improvement on the running back room too. So hopefully they're able to rely on those skill pieces, whereas New York arguably got worse after losing Saquon Barkley. They did draft Malik Neighbors, who I think will be good and will help Daniel Jones, but their quarterback is still Daniel Jones, even if they have a decent defense. T-Bone, your thoughts?
I have had personal experience with the Minnesota head number one quarterback, Sam Darnold. He's been a little bit horrible for some of his tenure with the Panthers, but in the end, he did all right. So I personally think that he can do just enough to get rid of the to get rid of the Giants and win, because I think the Giants are just that bad. I think they're just that bad. Give me the Vikes.
I think this is going to be a battle of two not very good football teams, but Minnesota has more skill positions. I would argue to you that they have the better quarterback. I would say Darnold is probably better than Jones. Jones, I think, is more dangerous with his feet, but he is not very good when he actually has to throw the football, and it's going to be a lot harder for the Giants' offense to operate effectively without Saquon Barkley, so I think I got to go with Minnesota here as well. Alrighty, our next matchup is the New England Patriots taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. New England coming off of being the second worst team in the NFL last year, plagued by injuries, bad offensive line play, and abhorrent quarterback play. New England's year fell apart last year after optimism at the beginning of the year and a team that looked good in the preseason, but too many injuries, too many mistakes, just too much, and New England falls apart. Still an excellent defense, though, a defense that pulled off a feat that had been pulled off since the 1930s when football was very low scoring to begin with. Less than 10 points allowed, 10 or less points allowed in 3 consecutive games. They lost all 3 because of the anemic offensive play, but they've bolstered the offensive line, gotten better wide receivers, improved the quarterback room. Number 3 overall pick, Drake May, will not be starting. Veteran Jacoby Brissett will, but Brissett is still a solid quarterback. Now, Cincinnati has one of the best quarterbacks in the entire NFL in Joe Burrow, one of the best wide receiver duos in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, a very good and underrated defense, and an underrated coach in Zach Taylor. T-Bone, your thoughts?
Despite the Bengals always crapping the bed in the early weeks, I don't envision the Patriots winning this game in any universe. Give me the Bengals.
I mean, I think New England is capable of making this a close football game. It's going to come down to their defense being able to stop that two-headed monster of Chase and Higgins. But New England's offense also has to produce in order to find success. And with how good Cincinnati's defense, I don't think they're going to be able to do that enough to keep up with the Bengals. So I think Cincinnati is going to walk away with this one as well. Alrighty, our next matchup is the Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Atlanta Falcons. Pittsburgh coming off of yet another mediocre year last year. That's all they seem to produce is mediocrity. But they always play better than you think they should. They have a hard-hitting defense. Big addition with Peyton Wilson in the draft. I think he's going to be one of the steals of the draft for Pittsburgh. No bias at all. Go Wolfpack. But big questions in the offense. Is Russell Wilson going to be able to produce enough? Is Najee Harris going to be able to produce? You know, there's questions there for Pittsburgh. Then you look at Atlanta. This is a team with a lot of good players, but also a lot of holes. There's a lot of concerns, but they do have Kirk Cousins, but then it's going to be, is he going to be able to play off of injury? They have good skill position players. They have Bijan Robinson. They have Kyle Pitts. And they have a decent defense, but the defense has some problems as well. So, 2 very muddied teams. T-Bone, your thoughts?
I am not going to be one of the people that is suddenly high on Atlanta because they got a new coach and they're gonna do Bijan right and they've got Kirk Cousins. No, they're gonna be the same old Atlanta. We're gonna trade some games. They're gonna be mediocre despite them having a star-studded cast. Give me the Steelers.
I see this matchup as a game between 2 teams with a lot of holes and a lot of problems. Atlanta on the defense, Pittsburgh on the offense. Atlanta has a good offense, Pittsburgh has a good defense, but so it's going to be really, really interesting to see how it pans, but I think I don't trust either team, but I trust Atlanta a little bit more in this week's matchup, especially at home, so I take the Atlanta Falcons to win this one. Alrighty, our next matchup is the Houston Texans taking on the Indianapolis Colts. The Texans, coming off of an excellent season last year, defied all odds. Everyone assumed they would be bottom 5 in the league. Instead, they win the division, make the playoffs, nuke the Browns in the wild card round before bowing out to Baltimore in the divisional round. And they only got better this offseason. This is a loaded roster. You got Stephon Diggs, you got Tank Dell, you got Nico Collins, you got Dalton Schultz, you got Joe Mixon, and you got CJ Stroud feeding all those guys the ball. That's going to be a dynamic offense. And you have a solid defense and a great head coach in Amico Ryans. Where you look over at Indianapolis, you have a team that almost won the division. If it weren't for a dropped pass versus Houston, they would have beaten Houston out for the division and made the playoffs with a backup quarterback. And I think people forget about that. Anthony Richardson looked good in the first few weeks before he got hurt. If he can learn to protect himself, I think Indianapolis is going to have a dynamic team. Good offense, good weapons, underrated defense, in my opinion, and division matchups are always funky. T-Bone, your thoughts?
I have the Texans. In no universe do I think that the Colts win this one. It's the Texans all the way. It's the Texans till I'm blue in the face. Always the Texans. Never not the Texans. The Colts aren't even that solid. You're trying to remember it's Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew is the greatest quarterback of all time. Now he's gone, okay? Colts have nothing, okay? Colts have nothing. It's the Texans.
Well, I disagree with you about Indianapolis. I think Indy is a team that is going to compete for the division. Again, I think they have a really, really underrated defense. And you talk about Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman and the running threat of Anthony Richardson, which is greater than Stroud's running threat. And they have a solid offensive line. I really think Indy is going to be a really tough team to play this year. But I do think that Houston will be able to do enough to outplay them. I think it'll be a really fun and really close matchup. But I think that Houston will, at the end of the day, outlast Indy. Alrighty, our next matchup is the Arizona Cardinals taking on the Buffalo Bills. The Cardinals coming off of a really disappointing year last year. It just was not good for Arizona at all. They end up with the number 4 overall draft pick where they draft Marvin Harrison Jr., who I think is going to be a great wide receiver and a great football player for them, but there's still lots of questions, not a great coach. Murray's good, but there's just too many holes in the rest of the team, especially in the defense. There's just so many problems in Arizona. They didn't do enough to improve their team, in my opinion, so I don't think they're going to be very good. Now you look at Buffalo. Buffalo is a team that has Josh Allen, who is very good, James Cook, running back, but they got worse, in my opinion, this past offseason, but they're still going to be a good team because of Josh Allen. So I think it's a one-sided matchup because Buffalo is still better than Arizona and better than a lot of teams in the NFL, but I think you're looking at a very interesting matchup here. T-Bone, your thoughts?
It's a closer game than anyone would like to think. I even think it could be up to a coin flip. I'm just taking Bills because I truly think Josh Allen can will them to the win.
And I tend to agree. Arizona will be a better football team than they were last year, and Buffalo will be a worse football team than they were last year. So it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out, but I do think Buffalo has the better defense and the better quarterback and the better running back, and I think those three things are going to be what gets them the win over the Arizona Cardinals. Alrighty, our next matchup is the Tennessee Titans taking on the Chicago Bears. Tennessee coming off of an interesting year last year. I don't know if it was better or worse than they were hoping. They were kind of mediocre, but there was definitely some areas of promise. Will Levis looked like he could actually be a decent quarterback if given the opportunity, and they were able to add Calvin Ridley. They already have DeAndre Hopkins. They're able to add Tony Pollard. They have a pretty good offensive line, and if Levis can step it up this year, I think that's going to be a pretty underrated offense, though the division is going to be really, really tough. They also have a solid defense, too. As long as they can stay healthy, Tennessee will be a decent team. Whereas you look at Chicago, who had a better year than I think people were expecting last year. Fields still didn't look great, but he did pull them close to making the playoffs. Obviously, that's a really tough division with Green Bay and Detroit. But with number 1 overall draft pick Caleb Williams and all the new additions they've made to this team, they're going to be better than they were last year. T-Bone, your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, no, totally. Giodetti's boyfriend and Tony Pollard, the best RB1 in history, is going to win. Yeah, sure. No, big time. Now, I do think they're going to win, but that's because of the superstition that number 1 overall quarterback hasn't won starting week 1 since the year 2002. So, I'm sure that the Titans are going to win because they do have a solid team. I'm not high on the Titans at all. I'm not big on the Titans at all.
I also have the Tennessee Titans winning. I think long term they're probably not going to be a better football team than Chicago, but I think it's going to be tough for Caleb Williams in his first game because opposing defenses are going to throw off well-disguised coverages, which is designed to mess with rookie quarterbacks, and Tennessee's defense is very good, so I think that they'll be able to suppress Caleb Williams enough to get the job done. Alrighty, our next matchup is the Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Miami Dolphins. The Jaguars coming off of a disappointing end of the year last year after they had a good start. It all fell apart and they missed the playoffs. Looking to bounce back this year. A team that, honestly, I don't think got better or worse. I think they're right around where they are. Losing Calvin Ridley could be a problem for them, but they still have decent skill positions on offense to work with. They have a decent defense. I think they're a relatively middle-of-the-pack team, to be honest. Then you look at the Miami Dolphins, who are always good at the beginning of the season. Obviously, there's concerns about playing in December and playing in the cold. You saw how badly they got beat up by the Chiefs in the playoffs last year, but this is a team that expects to win the division. They still have probably the best 1-2 wide receiver punch in the NFL with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And they still have a great running game with Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, a good offensive line, a solid defense, and a decent, at best, quarterback. T-Bone, your thoughts?
Uncalled for on all fronts. He's the best quarterback in the league. What are you talking about? No, you're just a hater. Jacksonville
you were totally being sarcastic, and middle of the pack is like 15, 16, which I think we would both put them there.
Jacksonville is not going to win this game at all. They're just not as good. It's not the fact that they're not a good team. You're a hater of the Jags. They're going to do something this year. But despite that, it's really just the fact that the Miami Dolphins are that good. So that's kind of my shtick.
I think Jacksonville is going to have a really, really difficult time stopping the Miami offense. I don't think Jacksonville's a bad team. I just don't think they're a great team. I think they're a good team, and I think they're going to have a really difficult time with both Tennessee and Indianapolis being in their division, especially since both of those teams got better and Jacksonville didn't really get that much better. But regardless of that, I think Miami's the better football team, and I think that their high-flying offense is going to overpower Jacksonville and get them a Week 1 victory. Alrighty, our next matchup is the Denver Broncos taking on the Seattle Seahawks. The Broncos, coming off of an awful season last year. Things did not go well with Russell Wilson. They were one of the few teams that actually managed to lose to the New England Patriots. And they end up drafting Bo Nix to replace him. Sean Payton is very high on Bo Nix. They do have some decent players on offense for him to work with, especially Cortland Sutton, who I thought had a really good year last year. I'm very high on him. But Denver still has a lot of questions they got to ask, and they played a really tough division to succeed. Where you look at the Seattle Seahawks, this is a team that probably did a little worse than they were hoping. They were hoping to get a wild card spot. It's always tough to win that division when you have the Rams and the 49ers. They were hoping for a wild card spot, couldn't pull it off. Kind of regressed last year. They're hoping for a bounce back year. New head coach, Mike McDonald, I really like. And they think they got probably better on both sides of the ball, so they're hoping. I think they're also hoping for a couple of breakout players this year too. But I think Seattle is a decent team. T-Bone, your thoughts?
Seattle is definitely going to be a decent team. I don't know if we're going to talk about, how good they're going to do in the division. Definitely, I don't think they're going to win. They might make a wild card spot. Who knows? But I certainly think that they're better than Denver on all fronts, even with some of the questions that the Seahawks have had to ask. And obviously they're regressing a bit, but no, I do. I do think the Seahawks are going to pretty handedly win.
Yeah, I think Seattle definitely has the advantage here. I think Bo Nix is probably going to be better than a lot of people give him credit for. I don't think he'll be elite by, at least to begin with, by any stretch of the imagination. And I think, again, opposing defenses are going to confuse. And Mike McDonald is an excellent defensive coach who I think is going to get into Bo Nix's head, and I think that's going to lead to mistakes, and Seattle is going to walk away with a Week 1 victory. Alrighty, our next matchup is the Las Vegas Raiders taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. The Raiders were not a very good football team last year at all. Absolute disaster. And this year doesn't look like they're going to be any better. They did not really get better this offseason. They do still have Devontae Adams, but Aiden O'Connell isn't a quarterback to write home about. He's not, Daniel Jones bad, but he isn't exactly spectacular either. They don't have a good defense. There's a lot of questions with this team. They have a couple of good individual players, but they do not have a good team. Whereas the Chargers, coming off of a really disappointing year last year, they just did not look good. Brandon Staley finally fired, God knows how many years too late. And they bring in a really good head coach in Jim Harbaugh, who I think is going to have the Chargers looking the best they have ever looked. They're going to look like a really good football team. They got better. They improved their offensive line. They improved their defense. And I think it's going to be... I think you're looking at a new, improved version of Los Angeles. T-Bone, your thoughts?
It's funny that you're talking about the Raiders QB2 like that's going to change anything. It's Gardner Minshew's time in Las Vegas, baby. Come on.
I thought they named O'Connell the starter, though.
No, Minshew's been the starter for like 2 weeks now. Okay, the Raiders are a crappy organization. You think they're naming Aiden O'Connell? And no hate, okay? Aiden O'Connell's nice. So is Gardner Minshew. They've got personality. They've got personality for days in the quarterback room. But that's not going to matter. I truly think that despite the Raiders having handedly beat the Chargers last meetup, that is all on Brandon Staley. I do think actually the Raiders are going to be better this season than they were last, just because of the offensive weapons that they have, and Gardner Minshew is competent enough. But I just think I think it's going to be similar to the Panthers, how the Chargers are going to be. They've got new personnel and just a lot of stuff. They've gotten rid of a lot of their weapons, but I really have hope in their coach. I really do think that Harbaugh being named their coach is going to do wonders for them. So I've got the Chargers winning. I think it's closer than a lot of people are going to give them credit for.
My big concern with Las Vegas is losing Josh Jacobs to the Packers. They didn't really replace him, so that's made their offense more one-dimensional. So I don't necessarily agree that they're going to be a better football team this year.
I like their coach, though. I think their coach is great.
I do like their coach. I would agree with that, but I just don't think the front office has done enough to help this team. And I think Los Angeles has done a lot. They've actually made some of the right moves for once in their franchise's history. And even if they hadn't made the right moves, I think they have a better team than Las Vegas, so give me the Chargers. Alrighty, our next matchup is the Dallas Cowboys taking on the Cleveland Browns. The Cowboys coming off of an unexpected division victory after the Eagles collapsed late last year. They win the division before going on to lose to the Green Bay Packers in the wild card round. Another disappointing postseason after an optimistic regular season. This is a team that got probably a little worse on the offensive side of the ball last year, losing Tony Pollard and having 2018's best running back room, 2024's most mediocre running back room. Probably some downgrades to the offensive line, but they still have Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, which is a really good connection. And they still have a really good defense. You got Micah Parsons. You got a good kicking game. Brandon Aubrey, excellent kicker. Shout out Birmingham Stallions. Then you look at Cleveland. Cleveland is a team with a really good defense and a lot of offensive pieces, but the big question is Deshaun Watson. Watson has not impressed since going to the Browns, and I think that has made most NFL fans absolutely happy. Because, well, we all know what kind of person Deshaun Watson is, and it makes us all happy to see those kinds of people lose. But Cincinnati still has a good roster. Obviously, injury concerns with Nick Chubb and David Njoku are a thing, but Cleveland's still a decent team. T-Bone, your thoughts?
I think that Dallas is one of those teams that is successful on all three sides of the ball, and that is what makes teams win. So I would personally say that I think that the Cowboys are going to handedly beat the Browns, for sure.
I tend to agree with you. I think the Browns' defense will make it tough for Dallas, but I think that Deshaun Watson's play is going to drag Cleveland down. I think Dallas is going to eat him up, and I think that's going to lead to a Dallas Cowboys victory. Alrighty, our next matchup is the Washington Commanders taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Washington coming off of an absolutely abysmal year last year. They went 4-13, got the number 2 overall draft pick where they drafted rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels. They picked up Austin Eckler for the running back room, a decent addition there. And then you talk about some other improvements, but there's still a lot of questions and a lot of holes with Washington's team, and the big concern is Jaden Daniels going to be able to play well. Then you look at Tampa Bay, a team who won their division last year, went to the playoffs, won a playoff game, and went toe-to-toe with the Detroit Lions before falling to them eventually. Baker Mayfield looking to have a career resurgence, had an excellent year last year, and if he and Mike Evans can keep that connection up with the good defense that they have, Tampa Bay could be a good team this year. T-Bone, your thoughts?
I absolutely think that Washington is going to be a better team than people think. Mainly, they just have a lot of good offensive and defensive pieces that they added. Really, one of the better free agencies, I would say, is, if I'm being honest, is Washington. But despite all that, I think it's still just not going to click for them on account of the fact that rookie quarterback and rookie head coach, not rookie head coach, long time since he's been a head coach.
Yeah, and there's a reason that it's been a long time since he was a head coach.
Yeah.
A very questionable hire, you could say.
So I personally just think that Tampa Bay is going to – smart money's on Tampa Bay. They're just going to do better.
Absolutely. I think the big reason Tampa Bay wins here is going to be their defense. Todd Bowles, excellent defensive coach. He'll be able to disguise his packages really well. I think that's going to give Jaden Daniels some trouble. It's always a bit of trouble for the rookie quarterbacks the first couple of weeks because they're not used to the disguises, and defensive coaches put in extra effort to really confuse them and throw them off their game, and I think between that and how good Tampa's offense can be if Baker and Evans get going, then I think Tampa Bay is going to win this football game. Alrighty, our next matchup, Sunday Night Football, we've got the Los Angeles Rams taking on the Detroit Lions. The Rams coming off of a good year last year where they played very well, had some injury issues mid-season, but bounced back after guys got healthy, made the playoffs, and put up a good battle in the wild card round versus Detroit, lost by one singular point to the Detroit Lions, but they played good football. They played well, and it just wasn't enough to a very, very good Detroit team who only got better this offseason. Jared Goff absolutely balled out last year. You got Amon-Ra St. Brown. You got Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. And you've got a pretty solid defense and a great head coach in Dan Campbell. So you're looking at two very, very good football teams hoping to make some noise this year. T-Bone, your thoughts?
Both teams are very good despite, Los Angeles losing some guys. I just think that the Lions are going to overwhelm the Rams. The Rams are going to get overwhelmed severely. So that's my opinion.
I disagree. I think it's going to be a close game. I think both teams have really good offenses and really good defenses. But I think Detroit is just that little bit better. I think it'll be a close game. It'll be a fun game. Another Stafford versus Goff rematch. But I think Detroit comes out on top and prevents the Rams from getting their revenge. And finally, Monday Night Football. You've got the New York Jets taking on the San Francisco 49ers. The Jets, coming off a disappointing season last year after Aaron Rodgers gets injured 4 plays into the season, tore his Achilles, out for the year. Now he's back, and they are hoping, especially since they have improved their offensive line, and they still have Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, and a very good defense. They're hoping to have a much better year, and they're hoping Aaron Rodgers can stay healthy and continue to play at a high level. Then you look at the San Francisco 49ers, who came within an inch of winning the Super Bowl. They fell just short, but they've locked in all their major pieces and are hoping to run it back this year. They have one of the best squads in the NFL, and I think they're going to be really tough for everybody they play to beat. T-Bone, your thoughts?
I honestly think this game will be closer than people think. I mean, obviously, San Fran's going to win. San Fran, most of these games are going to win. I've got San Fran. Though I do think it would be a great example of Rodgers just to see how the Jets are doing. So I think this would be a solid first game, just to see, does Rodgers still have it? He's got some weapons. So obviously San Fran's going to win, but hey, who knows?
I feel like everybody thinks it's going to be a really tight game, so I don't know how you can say it'll be closer than most people think, when most people already think it's going to be neck and neck.
I've not read that anywhere. What are you talking about?
That's what I've gotten from people.
Oh, what, from Twitter? Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank God. Thank God. Everyone, Vegas' Twitter saved the day.
Anyways, I think you're looking at two very, very good football teams. I think one team is clearly the better team. I have some concerns with the Jets. And the other thing, too, is New York's got to travel to California. This is a home game for San Francisco. And I think that's going to be a big factor here. And that's that, and just the fact that they have such an insanely good team makes me think that the 49ers are going to be the victors in this one. Alrighty, there you have it. Those are our predictions for all 16 games being played this week. Please be sure to let us know who you think is going to win down in the comments. And that is going to do it for us today. Thank you all so very much for watching. Please be sure to hit the like button. Please be sure to subscribe. And we will see you all